actually the presence of so many youngsters here is so inspiring, but at the same time challenging to see how to balance the technical and popular aspects of science, which is very interesting. What I'm going to talk is to actually take a thread from what the previous speakers have shown and discussed, and try to show some of our work in that context. So I will speak more on the nanoscience and clean energy aspects, and there is a lot of innovation here, both in terms of materials, the device architectures, and the application domains that one tries to look at. I don't want to go too many of these initial slides, but as you can see here, now is the nanotechnology age, as they say, in the coming years, because of various aspects and advances which have happened in the last 10 years. And in the initial phase of nanotechnology research, people were making all these nanomaterials in various forms, shape, and different properties and so on. And you can see all sorts of things were made over the period of 10 years. But more recently, you can see that these architectures can be developed in a much more organized fashion, much more nicer and device-worthy fashion. So you can actually make reproducible devices. Because devices are generally in the form of solid state, semi-solid state, and every device has to produce reproducible result. For example, if 5 of us buy the same mobile phone, it should not sound differently when you call somebody. Okay, there has to be a reproducibility. If you have solutions, you cannot work with that. You can work with that in a laboratory, but when it is technology, you have to do this. Okay, and this has been done. I want to tell younger people also that people are asking questions and learning from nature and trying to understand how nanotechnology can be developed in laboratories by learning from nature. For example, if you look at this particular sea animal, it is luminescent, it is throwing light, but there is nothing like any semiconductor or organic material or inorganic material which is so common there. There is something going on, and people are using some ideas taken from biological, mimicking biology and trying to make things in the laboratory to generate interesting colors and so on. Okay, for example, this flexible electronics, the field, this particular animal is very flexible and still has this fluorescent light. Then what are the materials which can do that? Then there are also other things. For example, there are certain animals like gecko who there are millions of very nanostructured sort of things on its paw, and through van der Waals forces, it connects and de-engages and runs faster. I mean, this gecko, young students may like to know that it moves at a speed of 1 meter a few seconds. Okay, at the same time, if you think, it holds the grip so strong that if you have a stone attached to its tail, even with that, it can move very fast and so on. So the question was, if you put a glue there in its feet, the glue can hold it, but you cannot detach and run with that. So what is the force which is holding it and how it is running? It comes through van der Waals force, which is a very strong force at short distances, and by a biological movement, this guy can move and engage and so on and so forth. So people are able to mimic that, and on the right hand side, you see by MIT lab how they have made this particular thing in a lab, and people are trying to float in the session and things of that nature. So mimicking nature, a lot of things can be done. Now, our chairman has done some interesting work on how the butterflies have their colors. Many of the butterflies, some of them may have dyes, like in leaves and so on, but colors come from nanostructures and optical effects. For example, think of it. Water does not have a color, but you get rainbow from water drops, right? So you can have geometric effects generated on these wings, and it is simply the geometry which is nanostructure, few hundred nanometer scales, which can generate these effects. So what I'm telling to my younger friends here is a lot of exciting things can be learned there, and you can do those things from here. And the number of applications of the nano wires and so on. Look at this particular, a white light emitting material generated from nanostructures, the nano wires, carbon nanotubes that Professor Sood talked about. Okay, imagine a situation that these are extremely lightweight right-hand side flags, and imagine in a village you put all these flags on the and you use sunlight to store a little bit of charge during the day in the batteries, and this will light the whole village in the evening. What exciting possibilities these things generate, and younger people should start thinking about this. Okay. Then this is wearable devices. The new age is a day of wearable devices, and you can wear everything, right from putting medicines, your health checkup, and everything is going to be adapted on these particular wearable devices, and a lot of interesting things can be done with flexible nanomaterials, where the 2D nanomaterial, once again our chairman spoke about earlier, are very, very exciting because they are flexible, strong, and they are trustworthy in this way. What I am going to talk about also in the final thing sensors, and that is where nanotechnology is extremely strong. And I will give you a couple of examples of what our work is. But do you know that in a modern car, people are working on driverless car these days? In fact, my son at Google is a part of which is working on Google's driverless car there, and they are having more 250 to 300 sensors in variety of ways, and trying to go there. In fact, recently I had visited Google and drove through California roads on the Google's driverless car. It is so much fun to do that, and she is my daughter-in-law actually, and we had a fun to go in the actual roads without a driver. Of course, was sitting, he was not touching anything, neither a brake nor the thing, and you see how there are many nanotechnology parts going into all these developments, which is very exciting. Okay, so what I will talk about more is now the devices. These are the slides borrowed from, they are not my slides, borrowed from friends, and you can see that there is a law which says that when you go devices down and down, you will go into very small devices. How small a device can be? Can an atom be a device? Can a molecule be a device? People are asking very different questions, and you are going, by 2020, you are going into a dimension which is going to be extremely small, and you are making devices in that domain. So it will be very interesting to see how this can happen. There is another interesting thing. When you make nanotechnology or devices based on nanotechnology, there is a lot of power dissipation that is happening in a very small volume. Okay, initially when you had, look at there, the feature size, when you had micron size devices, okay, the power input on the left bottom was like 1 watt in the device scale. Now if you go into a Pentium 4, which many of you have in your chips and mobiles and things and computers and so on, the power dissipation is like 75 watts in that particular zone and so on. So you have to establish mechanisms to do extremely good thermal conductivity into the devices, because otherwise the device will become very hot. And this is where graphene and other types of materials are going to play a role. So the purpose of these 10 minutes was basically to excite you about what opportunity exists for some good science which is application worthy. Okay. Now I come to this particular part of energy, which is my current field of activity. And as you know, energy is a need for sustainability. Nature already has energy for sustainability, but power is our requirement. We want development to go fast, and we are utilizing a variety of fuels in various ways. And you find here that because of this particular development, if you do not use right kind of fuels for energy to drive these developments, then the environmental and health consequences can be very hazardous. Okay, so right now, and also you will realize that in India we have two types of situations. On one hand, on the left hand side, you see our own cities like Bangalore and Delhi and Mumbai and so on and so forth, where we have a lot of grid power. But on the other hand, on the right hand side, you will see there are situations where there is no grid power which is reaching there. Okay, so you have to generate local solutions and try to give power to empower people in terms of education, in terms of their livelihood, living, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there are three aspects for renewable or clean energy generation. You have to convert energy. Solar cells are there to convert energy. Okay, there are a variety of new types of solar cells based on nanotechnology which are coming, not simply the old-fashioned silicon solar cells. And then you can also do solar water splitting for hydrogen generation, because the previous speaker spoke about fuel cells. What is a fuel cell? In a fuel cell, hydrogen comes from one side, pure oxygen comes from the other side. It forms water, H2O, and gives out energy. Okay, and H2O is not a pollution, it is a water. It is not like a smoke which is coming out from a car. Okay, so this is a clean way of doing it. But where do you get hydrogen from? Okay, that is where you have to think. See, there is everywhere sun and there is everywhere water. In fact, civilization always is around water, all here. So if you use sun and water, there is a lot of hydrogen in water, but you have to split that H2O. And if you use sun instead of the grid power to do electrolysis, somebody will say just do electrolysis. But then that power for electrolysis to get hydrogen and oxygen has to come from sun in some way. Either it can come through a photovoltaic cell, or it can come directly for photocatalytic water splitting, and nanotechnology is helping you to accelerate those processes. This is what water splitting is. I'll give you some example of our works here. For instance, what is important in all this application is, suppose you take a material and you put it into water and you throw light on it. Okay, and let's say on the surface there is a catalytic reaction which splits water. Okay, but then the material should be stable in that water, because after some time the catalytic reaction will go away and hydrogen will stop coming out. Okay, for example, zinc oxide is a very interesting material, but we had to put a little bit of zinc ferrite on the top, a few nanometer layer and a few gold nanoparticles to increase the output like this. So these are nano engineered catalysts, and you see here On the left hand side graph, the blue curve is what we get in terms of hydrogen output only if you use zinc oxide nanostructures. If I put a little bit of stabilizing and catalyzing force of zinc ferrite on the top of a few nanometer, you get the brown curve. And if I put a spray of gold nanoparticles to do field focusing effect, you get the red curve. So you see, tremendous amount of increase in hydrogen output can be realized by engineering this particular nanostructure. We have also worked on a variety of other materials. For example, there are a number of oxides which are catalytically reactive, and then either you use like cadmium stannate as some particular oxide in a nanostructured form. Again, nanostructure is important, or you can engineer that in some particular way, that is, you take two materials and try to engineer the nanostructure to get an output. The left graph shows the lower one, green one, is the one only with cadmium stannate. Okay, and the red one is the one with cadmium stannate with a little bit of cadmium sulfide added to it. Both are in the form of nanostructure, and you see how much the hydrogen output is enhancing in this particular way. So nano engineering of appropriately selected materials is extremely important to get an output. Let me show you one other point here. Now this is a work of one of my students, Divya. What we have done here is we have done CO2 reduction at room temperature. CO2 is a very robust molecule, and on surfaces when it gets adsorbed, it doesn't really get activated in this particular way. Fe2O3, which is our red mud, but you get red mud here, that is Fe2O3. If you use that as a catalyst, it doesn't do anything, although its band gap is appropriate, etc. It has 2.2 eV, which absorbs solar light properly. It doesn't do anything to CO2 reduction and so on. But what we did was, we formed an aerogel type of a material. You can see on the left hand side here, in this particular picture, it is a nanostructured hematite, and we tried to stabilize by a particular process defects on the surface. Now, many of you know that if you have a material and if you produce certain defect states there, you can catalyze it in a very interesting way. And as you see here, what we see in the left graph here is the blue. Blue is the one which bulk hematite does water split or the CO2 reduction. But if you take the red one, it is by the nanostructuring with defect engineering. Okay, so tremendous advantage in CO2 reduction you can achieve in this particular way. Okay, let me go to another field which the previous speaker talked about, and that is the electrical energy storage. Okay, this is the one which are all our older vehicles and pollution, and we are going to move in this particular direction. There are two types of storages that will be available. One will be, for suppose we are having a solar house or an energy house in which you have fuel cells, in which you have solar cells, like the left one here, then you need a battery which is stationary in the house. Okay. On the other hand, if you have vehicles like that, okay, you will need a storage which is mobile. It cannot be very heavy, because if you put so much of battery into a vehicle, the vehicle will not move. Then you have no use of that. So you have lightweight battery vehicles you need, and you want to engineer them using lightweight, low-Z materials like graphene or boron nitride and things of that nature, or maximes in some particular way, and then you can do something there. Remember, let me also tell you a little bit, the previous speaker mentioned about batteries and supercapacitors. Without going into technical details, I will just say that battery can store a lot of amount of energy density, but it doesn't have more power density. That means battery cannot charge or discharge very rapidly. We know our mobile battery, when we charge a mobile, we sit there and we sit for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then the mobile charge fully, right? And however, once the mobile is charged the whole day, we can use this and so on. On the other hand, the so-called device of supercapacitor, which is not a conventional supercapacitor, it charges by storing a lot of energy on the surface of a porous medium. Okay, so imagine a situation, you are sitting here, we are more like a lithium battery, and imagine all of you are like lithium ions. Okay, now suppose you have to go out quickly for dinner after the next talk, of course, not after my talk. Okay, so then one of you will go and then the next one will go. So it is a series of sitting. So you are like sitting in the graphene sheets there, and you are going inside one by one and the whole, but we are not of them. Imagine that out of this particular hall, we remove 800 chairs, okay, and they are arranged randomly like a porous medium. Then all of you can just stand up and leave. You will not have to wait for the other guy to go, and follow. Okay, that is like a supercapacitor. But instead of 1,000 chairs, you will have 200 chairs. That means less energy density, but quicker, because you can charge and go quickly. Now you look at the bus there. What they are trying to do is, in a bus, if you have a city bus, okay, do you have to have batteries there, or can you work with supercapacitors? The reason is, suppose I have a bus, you go on the bus and come down, okay, and then go to the next stop. By the time the passengers get off and get down, if the bus charging device charges, then that is good enough. So if you have a device which charges in, let's say, 30 seconds, while the passengers go up and down, you don't have to put a big battery on the bus so that the battery will take around the town. You only need a device which will let it go to the next stop, and by the time passengers go up and down, it charges and goes to the next stop and gets charged there. So that is how that charging station is. So people are working on super capacitors for buses. Okay, when the battery will be something needed to go from Tirupati to Chennai or Bombay to Pune, then you don't want to stop every 20 minutes to charge and so on and so forth. So the devices are of a different type. Okay. Now, by the way, this electric vehicle we are talking about, but the first electric full car was in 1887. When people discovered lead acid batteries, they were all sitting on that. This was like sitting on a bomb. You know, you can imagine, you know, the guts of these people at that time, 150 years back, they already had the idea of electric vehicle and did that, but we are doing it now. Okay. Now, carbon, again, our first speaker and Professor Sood mentioned, is a fantastic material in various ways, and graphene in particular, but carbon forms in general can do this. And I will show you how we work on this. So this is something which is where we are generating a porous medium, porous graphene. I will just give you a couple of examples and then stop here. But this is a porous graphene made from certain particular way, and this graphene is like a 3D architecture graphene. This is like a crumpled sheet, not like a sheet of graphene. Because if you make sheets of graphene in a solution and you put them one on the top of each other, it becomes like a notebook. Okay, there is no space left in between them for ions to go and store. Okay, so imagine all the chairs are pushed one on like a stack. You cannot go inside. But if you have, you know, porous graphene, so it is, you look at the 2D peak there, you can do charging of supercapacitor fast and so on. We have also done variety of studies here. Okay, for example, this is the one in paper. What we tried to do was we used dead leaves, the leaves which are all falling from trees. You know, there are a lot of porogen forming materials, like they have magnesium, they have calcium and so on. And if you pyrolyze that, and if you after that you get a carbon which is comprising of all these things, and if you acid wash, there are so many pores created there, and it gives you a nice porous material to give a supercapacitor and so on. Okay, and we have also made you are using even sugarcane bagasse, and we are working with an industry to do that. Let me show you also that there is a lot of fun to do this in the lab. You know, so students can probably get excited about this. You know, it is. So it is enjoyable to actually do things in the lab using the carbon that we made. We make a full supercapacitor, and it is a lot of fun for my students to actually make a supercapacitor, which is more or less commercial type rather than just doing something random. You see, it is made like this. You make contacts. You know, you roll it, and this is the carbon made from, you know, sugarcane bagasse, you know, and then you coat it like this, you warm it, and now these are the two electrodes, as the previous speaker showed, the carbon electrodes, where the charge is going to be stored with a membrane in between. Okay, this is the membrane which transports ions, but keeps the two electrodes apart from each other, and you roll it. And this is the roll of a supercapacitor. You put it in the enclosure. Okay. And now you put electrolyte into it, which will actually carry the ions from one electrode to the other through the membrane, and it is all done. The supercapacitor is getting charged and so on and so forth. I will rather skip this particular thing. Okay. This is a fun for our students. Okay. All right. What is this? I have to shut off this video. Okay. All right. So the other thing is, when technology comes, we are making these particular materials and so on, and we are trying to see how we can make them fast. For example, in this work, what we tried to do was to make this particular material within minutes rather than within 24 hours putting in a furnace. So there was a kitchen microwave oven which was used, and we used some tricks of combustion synthesis and made a battery material, you know, so we call it Minute Maid. You must have heard the name of Minute Maid orange juice and so on, so forth in US. So this is a Minute Maid battery material that we make within minutes, and it has performed very well in terms of stability, etc., etc. So a lot of fun stuff which can be done here. And then we have made also the so-called wearable devices. So supercapacitors are batteries, how you can make for wearable devices for health sensing and other things. And we do laser scribing, and you can see this is made in this particular way, and it is stable. You can see this is stable up to 200,000 cycles, the supercapacitor, and you can also bend it like this. Over 1,000 cycles, nothing happens to its property, and so on and so forth. So variety of things can be done. There are various materials like porosity is not the property only in terms of carbon that we use, but there are many materials using MOFs and COFs that we can generate, which are highly porous CuO, or even you have TiO2, and that is very highly porous TiO2, which you can use also as a conversion, as a conversion electrodes in batteries and things of that nature. Okay. Finally, I will just show a few slides about the other area, which is energy conversion, namely solar cells. Many of you may know that the dye-sensitized solar cells, and more recently the perovskite solar cells, is an area we are working on. In this case, you use a material like TiO2 nanopowder, okay, which is activated using dyes, or which is activated with the inclusion of perovskites for a different principle altogether, and so on. And you make solar cells which are like this. And what we have tried to do is, for example, in this case, we have developed a solar cell by entirely processing everything at room temperature. No heating is involved. Okay. Now this particular solar cell, and you can see on the right bottom side, the solar cell is being bent like this. Okay, and we get 3% efficiency of the solar cell. So these are nanomaterial based solar cells, not silicon. They are flexible. You can get efficiency. So the question is, can you paint outside walls or windows using these solar cells? At best, what you can do is, if you need a little bit of heating, you can have a hair dryer or something to heat it and get a solar cell, and then try to use it in some way. Variety of interesting ideas can be used. Okay. Let me show you one more thing. By using these solar cells, we have made solar charging for our farmer. You know, all of you know that farmers now have mobile, but they have nothing to charge them in the village. So what they do is, they go to a nearby taluka place where they sell their vegetables, get their mobile charged, and get it back. Okay, and after 1 week they do it again, and so on. Of course, the mobile does not discharge as quickly as ours does, because we are all the time on the mobile, having all SMSs sent here and there. So they have some kind of moderate requirements. But if while working in the field, if their mobile can be charged, we wanted to make a solar cap, and we made it. The solar cells that you see here are made in my lab actually, and so these are all solar cells we made in our lab. Okay, and this cap is from Guwahati, by the way. We went to a conference there, it was very nice. And you see now, so the mobile is charging. Okay, yeah. So this guy was very happy, and tried to, and as an actor, in the very first take, he could put that thing inside, because he was the very happy person that he said, oh, mobile will be charged by sun. He was very happy to act in the movie, and in the first take, he got it right in this way. Okay. All right. Let me just end in a couple of minutes now, because I am already probably shooting ahead on time. I just want to do a variety of things. We are making, by the way, we are making 2D nanomaterials here that Professor Sood mentioned, even of these hybrid perovskites, by doing some tricks. So these are 2D hybrid perovskite materials, which are interesting. And then there is final thing about sensors. We are making sensors which are very interesting. One of my students actually made this sensor by mimicking an eye. In an eye, we have a retina on which you have this photo sensor, and there is a liquid in front of the eyes. So what we tried to do was, we had the zinc oxide nanorods, and we put water on it. Not literally, but we put a water containing gel on it. And we found that the optical response there of that zinc oxide, it got enhanced 1,000 times, which is shown in this paper, because of the interface band bending and how charges are separated and so on. So this was mimicking an eye for an optical sensor. A lot of fun to do, as I gave examples of biomimicking and so on. Okay, so that's it. At IISER Pune, we are now a center of energy science, thanks to Professor Sood, Professor C.N.R. Rao and others, who have given us a thematic unit, and we are working on a variety of things. This is just for the information of the people there, and variety of aspects, both science and applications. And I leave you with this slide. All the scientists who are assembled there. On one hand, whatever science we do does help a common person at one time or the other, but if there are certain immediate solutions which are from our science, all these equations and diagrams and so on, can you do something for that woman who is sitting there, is the question that I leave you with. Thank you very much.